Hi, and welcome from the Harvard Graduate School of Education. My name is Domonic Rollins, and I'm the Senior Diversity and Inclusion Officer. Today I'm here with
Jonathan Crossley, Principal of Baseline Academy in Little Rock School District.
You're tuning in to another episode of Walking the Talk. It's our live conversation series about diversity and inclusion and how you actually enact it. You know, a real conversation. I have Jonathan here from Little Rock. Little Rock has a long history of trying to do the integration thing, and we have a long way to go. We'll get started with our conversation. So, Jonathan, tell me a little bit more about Baseline.
So Baseline is a wonderful school. So 3 years ago, the district decided to reconstitute as part of the school improvement efforts. And they hired me at the time, a 27-year-old principal, to turn the school around. They gave me about 3 weeks to hire a staff of 44 people and implement professional development plans and get the strategy up and running.
What was that like, given Little Rock's history?
It was crazy. It was 100% crazy. It's a task that I welcomed when I was sitting on the State Board of Education. As the state teacher of the year, Little Rock became near and dear to my heart.
Okay.
So listen to principal after principal talk about their school, teacher after teacher talk about what was necessary for improvement. And it really struck me that something had to be done. Now, am I the perfect principal? Was I the perfect principal for the job? I don't know.
Okay.
But it really stuck with me that I needed to do something in Little Rock. So I was a teacher for 5 years in the Arkansas Delta.
Okay.
So for a little bit of context, that's in the middle of nowhere. My front yard was a soybean field.
Okay.
So every day I woke up, saw soybean growing in the front yard, went to school, and taught students reading, writing, math, science. Loved it. Little Rock is totally different because it's an urban setting. And so people were very skeptical about me, a 27-year-old white principal, coming in to be a turnaround principal for black and brown children.
So this is a key point here.
Yep.
That you are the principal at a school that is like 98, 96% students of color, 100% low-income students.
Right.
Talk to me a little bit about the trust that you had to build to work across difference.
So growing up, I was one of the only white people in my friend groups.
Okay.
So for me, I entered the space feeling pretty comfortable, feeling like I could really tackle a conversation. So what I came to realize is not everybody is comfortable with that.
Okay.
A white guy walking into an all black or brown space and that guy being fine. Like, let's have a good time. Let's talk about that. And that didn't happen naturally when I came into the school. So at first I was a little offended, like, are they going to accept me as the principal? Will the parents accept me as the principal of the school? And there's this one story that stuck out to me that was so interesting. So I had one of, at that time she was a second grader. She came up to me and she said, it's about the second day of school. She came up to me and she goes, Mr. Crossley, I ask you a question. I was like, okay, what is it? She goes, why are you the principal of the school? I was like, that's a great, that's a very astute question. I said, I'll tell you, why are you asking me that? She said, well, my mom looked at me the other day and she said, why is that white man being the principal? He talks funny. And I was like, that's interesting that you say that, because across these lines that we have in Little Rock, in Arkansas, and in the country, we don't see each other enough. We don't talk with each other enough to build a collective identity.
Okay.
So what I wanted to do first and foremost at the school was build a collective identity, and that takes time. We're in year 3, and we're just now getting to the point to where 450 parents will show up for a parent night. At first we had 25, 30, 80, and now we have the majority of the parents of our schools showing up feeling encouraged by what we do at the school.
It sounds like you've had some experiences, like growing up and connecting with folks of color. Hey, we'll take a seat.
Sure, go ahead.
And that gave you sort of a way to understand what it might mean to engage and interact across difference. Right now we have a lot of white folk who are leading schools, school systems, who don't share identities with the people they serve. They don't share lived experiences. How do you lead in that context? Like, you came in with a sense of familiarity that probably had you, be at ease or be able to connect. A lot of white folk in education don't have that right now.
Well, for me, I mean, I was aware of it. I was comfortable.
Yeah.
I felt good. But that doesn't mean everybody's going to.
Right.
Because that white savior complex is something that comes out in a lot of these school improvement movies.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
come out in media. This idea of this young white teacher coming out and save the day for students of color in the inner city. And that's something that's been perpetuated over time, unfortunately so. And I think for white people, and I will speak in generalizations here, I will. For white people, sometimes I think it's hard to take a moment and a step back and realize I really don't know what it's like to walk a mile in your shoes.
Right. Right. That's not something that you will ever know.
Ever know.
And so then what?
Yeah. Then what means we have to sit down and have a real conversation. Right? So this is the first time we've met.
Yep.
And I enjoy talking with you. This should not be the only time that we talk.
Right.
If I really want to know what your experience is like, I'll sit down with you over dinner, over a drink, and talk with you about what it's like to be you.
Why is that hard for people to get?
I don't think it's hard for them to get. I think it's hard for them to do.
Okay.
We like the idea of being friendly with somebody that looks different than us. We don't like the idea of doing life with someone that looks different than us. We'll be pleasant.
Yeah.
I mean, the South is a place where we're super pleasant. Like we'll smile and we'll say we're praying for you and whatever else.
Yep.
But we will not actually take the time to do life with you when you need it and when I need it.
Yep.
And I think that's what changes the narrative. Brian Stevenson, Brian
Just
Stevenson,
Mercy?
I love that book and love his TED Talks and just his work in general has really impacted the way that I think about identity and my work as a principal and whatever other roles that I have. I don't have it all figured out yet. Like I'm blessed to be talking with you right now, but this is one perspective.
Sure.
And I want to be part of the conversation that is heightening the awareness of advocacy versus agency.
Tell me a little bit more about that.
So for the longest time, I really love the idea of being an advocate.
Why?
Because I was the first in my family to go to college.
Okay.
And so for me, I was like, man, I needed somebody to give me a voice.
Yep.
I believe that for myself.
Yep.
I needed somebody to give me a voice. What I didn't recognize was my voice was already powerful because I had a lived experience.
Yeah.
And so in my school right now, I think I even started my first year this idea of being an education advocate.
Sure.
Now I want to build agency in my families and in my students to highlight and raise their already powerful voice because of their lived experience to change the narrative in our city, in our state, and in our country.
And so for you, like that idea of agency and developing one's agency, like that's something that's central and that matters. How do people, I guess, get that wrong?
I don't think we have time to like. What do you mean by that? Like, talk a little bit about that.
Like, the idea or the concept to me makes perfect sense.
Okay,
right. I believe that people, like our children, come into this world, already sort of having a way about them, having power, and that there's some moments I need to advocate for them, but I know that ultimately the system and how I need them to be is to be more agentic. That feels intuitive to me, yet I don't see loads of people as educators doing that.
So I don't know if this answers the question totally, but this is my response. I think we have to first acknowledge that there are systems in place, 100%, that keep people of color down.
Okay.
So more than one truth can exist in a space and function, right?
That's right.
So
That's
this
right.
idea, like institutional systems are in place that keep black and brown people down because we love segregation in our society, and we love to have and have-nots, right?
Yep.
Also, your voice, because you have a lived experience, is so powerful that it can break the chains of oppression. And that goes for people of any color, any background. And so as a principal and as a leader in education right now in the state of Arkansas, I want to leverage both of those realities to address the system that is institutionally keeping people down, while also elevating the stories of people who have power within them. They just aren't realizing it yet.
How do you say that and do that with other white people?
That's hard. I think there was a quote, and I'm going to butcher it, but there was a quote that basically said, when white people are together, it's either empowerment or collusion.
Yes.
Like, and you go, I don't know if you heard that quote or not before, but you're like, yes. And so I just want to be more mindful of that.
Okay.
What am I saying when I'm with a bunch of folks that look like me? My background, I'm not a country club white guy.
Sure.
But upon first glance, if I'm wearing a suit, you might think that.
That's right.
And there's all sorts of stereotypes that come with that.
That's right.
So I'm the first in my family to go to college, and there's so many things in my life that allow me to have a perspective that I still feel like that little 8-year-old kid that's scared to tell his class that his dad works at a cotton mill.
Yeah.
Like I'm still that guy inside of me. And there are people that have that same mentality or thought with different backgrounds or experiences. We don't have a common conversation to heighten our connectedness.
Right. So we never talk about these things.
Yeah.
And a part of what it means to be white in a U.S. context is that you can more easily cover and get access to privileges and benefits, even though you may be showing up marginalized and minoritized with other identities.
It's an assumed goodness.
That's right.
Yeah, and that shows up every single day. I think a personal example. I was pulled over by the cops the other day.
Okay.
In a town that's it has a reputation for being a little racist. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
I was pulled over. I was speeding, and I didn't have my license renewed.
I don't want to tell you.
But how would you feel?
No.
How would you feel? No. Let's have this conversation. How would you feel if you were in that situation?
If I'm in that situation, like I know that I'm being locked up. Like I'm fearful. I'm scared.
Locked up. Just locked up.
I mean, in today's climate, like abuse. I mean, there's like.
At least you think about it. Like that's an actual thought that you have immediately, right?
I mean, all that's on the table.
Yep. So for me, you know what I thought? Let me put my best schmooze on. I bet I can get out of this ticket.
Right.
And you know what happened?
What?
Got out of the ticket.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to generalize every encounter that ever happens.
No, but that's 2018. That's alive and well right now.
But I approach power differently. In that situation, that cop had all the power.
Right.
And so I, as a white male, approached it differently. And that's a simple example, and I'm sure there's tons better than that.
Yeah.
But if that's an example of a white male approaching a situation differently than a black male would because of the power structures.
Right.
Why can't we just acknowledge that that's real in the world right now? It's this is like the white fragility factor.
But that also means that there's something that you have to give up. Right, and a lot of folks, when it comes to power, I mean, this is a race conversation, but we could do this across other dimensions of difference.
Sure,
they're like that means an acknowledgement of, and an acknowledgement of a thing that I didn't earn.
Yeah,
and
you're telling me.
And then an acknowledgement that I have to give that up or negotiate it differently or be differently in the world.
It's this pie complex. Like we think there's this one pie, and if I give up something, then somebody else is going to get it, or if somebody else gets it, I'm giving it up. You know, how I like to think of it, I'm not the first person that's thought this way, but I like the thought. It's not teach a man, or not give a man a fish.
Sure.
It's not teach a man how to fish. It's help the man own the pond. Like help the man own his own pond so that our whole community is better. We don't think that way institutionally. Our leaders don't think that way. And I would posit this, all right? If our leaders, superintendents, governors, president of the United States, representatives, if they all had within them a belief, a connectivity, an identity that was wrapped up in equity, this whole thing would change.
Oh, absolutely. And I would be remiss, given the series, to not go back and say, give a person a pond and allow them to fish.
Yeah.
I want to, because we've gotten up here, which has been great, I want to get back down to sort of education. And in the context of Little Rock, what's changed? What's working? I mean, we got a lot of educators looking in, and you probably know a good bit about the history, or at least had to learn it, and you're part of an effort to make it different. What could you tell folks about making a change in a community that is challenged?
I think for me, what the lessons that we've learned at Baseline was always centered around making Baseline a hub for the local community.
Okay.
And it's kind of a case study, and we're intentionally, doing it that way. We want parents to feel comfortable coming to our school for whatever the need may be. So I'll give you some simple examples. One, we did job fairs 2 years ago, started them 2 years ago, and we had the very first job fair within an hour. We had 50 parents show up. We only have 310 or 20 kids. 50 parents showed up in the first hour. 43 were undocumented.
Wow.
That just doesn't happen in Little Rock specifically, just with the climate and how the conversation is. There was almost nothing for me to do to get them a job in that moment.
Sure. Because
people were coming in, they wanted to hire on the spot, but there were so many barriers and hoops to jump through. It took me and us building that relationship and having conversations with those parents on an ongoing basis to have them continually come back.
Sure. What's a strategy you use to building the relationship? I think that's the thing that a lot of schools are endeavoring, and so sometimes people locate the problem in parents. Well, they don't want to be in a relationship with us, or I don't have time for that after work, right? I mean, but the building the relationship is key and important.
Man, this is going to sound hokey, but presuming positive intent.
Sure.
Parents,
sure.
I would argue with you to say parents do want to be accepted, and parents do want to have a relationship with the school. But I think historically the ways that principal, and I'll put it on us. I'll put it on, because I accept responsibility for things at the school. The way that principals have historically talked to parents has been deficit-minded.
Yeah.
Your student didn't do whatever. I make positive phone calls home every day. At least 10 every day, calling parents and saying, this is something awesome that happened today.
Yeah.
Your kid killed it with whatever the activity was or what. And it's small gestures like that extrapolated to like larger things where teachers are also making those phone calls, and there's incentive programs for all kids. It creates a different culture inside the school where the discipline is restorative and not punitive, because the school to prison pipeline in America is crazy. Let me tell you something. The school to prison pipeline in the southern states of the United States is crazy. I mean, we're investing in private prisons and not investing in public education.
Yes. Like
cutting the budget.
No, all well too known, right, for folks as where we're headed. And I think I desire that more people like understand that both the dynamics on the ground and what's happening systematically to our low-income children, to our black and brown and of color kids. As we begin to sort of bring the conversation to a close a little bit, what do folks need to know about leading change efforts that are supposed to be inclusive and equitable?
It's really hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard, and it's been an evolution of my leadership. I'm still young, but I was really young when I took over as principal. And, I had some sort of expertise in a classroom with turning around a classroom, and test scores went through the roof, and that's how I became, known, was how we improved test scores in my classroom. Let me tell you something. That's the lowest bar for school improvement that there is. If we're gauging all of our efforts around a test score, we are missing the mark about what it means to be a leader and what it means to be human. So for me, when I think about what's really important and how you get things done, I look at something that came out of this university a few years back called the DICE method. It's the duration, the integrity, I think it's the commitment and the effort. You have to survey your staff and your system around those four things.
Yeah.
And sometimes the hard reality is we don't have the integrity of the system in mind, meaning how we go about things, but also meaning the people that we have leading.
Yeah. We'll wrap with this idea and we'll get up. Sure. How has it mattered to you being a white man leading these efforts?
Confusing. It's been very confusing at times. I mentioned previously, like when I was growing up, many of the rooms that I was the only white guy, right? And so there's like this assumed comfort that I have, but I think I've grappled over the last 3 years more than I ever have, that I still don't know what it's like to walk a mile in your shoes.
Well, that's a part of the journey. And I don't know that a lot of folks in whatever dominant identity they may have. So today we've had mostly a race conversation, but it could be a conversation around sex assigned at birth. It could be a conversation around sexual orientation, socioeconomic class status.
100%.
That to understand it, to move closer to that understanding requires a lot of work, and it requires a journey, and it requires effort that you don't actually have to do. You have to make the choice, and that choice, I think, has to be grounded in the desired outcome for both inclusion and equity. Folks, thank you for tuning in. It's been great to be with Jonathan Crossley, principal at Baseline Academy in Little Rock, Arkansas. If you would like, please stay with us a little bit later today as we'll have an Ask With forum that will stream live. Jonathan will be a part of that along with some folks from the Little Rock 9. Signing off from the Harvard Graduate School of Education. Thanks.